2024 is definitely the year of QD-OLEDs, but with so many options that look the same, it can be hard to know which one to get. But did Samsung come out with a QD-OLED monitor that truly stands out against the competition? Hey, I'm Nicholas from Ratings.com. Today we're reviewing another Samsung Odyssey OLED G8 monitor, which is also known as the G80SD or the S32DG80. Alright Samsung, we need a word. You already released the OLED G8 in 2022 as an ultra-wide. This one couldn't have gotten a different name. Anyways, it's pretty different from the older G8 because it has a 32-inch 4K screen with a 240Hz refresh rate, so it's not a replacement to the other G8. So exactly how does this monitor perform, and is it worth getting versus every other QD-OLED coming out in 2024? First, let's look at the design and stand. It's pretty simple with a plastic body that's mainly silver, and it doesn't have your typical monitor look. It's well made, and you can adjust the stand in pretty much any way you want, making it very easy to place in an ideal position. There's even a clip on the back for basic cable management. Besides that, all the inputs are at the bottom of the back, so they're really easy to access. It's pretty basic in terms of inputs, with two USB-A ports and a DisplayPort 1.4 input. It also has two HDMI 2.1 bandwidth ports, and one of them actually serves as an ARC port. This means you could connect a soundbar or receiver and play audio from devices connected to the monitor, like a gaming console. It's a pretty neat feature for a monitor, but it's also useful because it doesn't have an analog audio output, so it's the only way to connect an audio device. One last thing that we'll talk about is the fact that it comes with a remote. This is because it supports Samsung's Tizen Smart platform, so you can stream content from apps like Netflix and Disney Plus without even needing a PC. The remote lets you navigate through the smart system, and because it's the same remote that comes with Samsung TVs, you can even use the voice assistant feature. Play ratings videos. Now that we know what it looks like, let's see how it looks in a bright room. Like most QD-OLEDs, it doesn't get very bright in SDR, but it's still enough to fight glare in rooms with some lights around. It also gets bright enough in HDR to make small highlights pop against the rest of the image, but it doesn't keep that high brightness with larger highlights. However, the main advantage of using it in a bright room is that it has a matte screen coating with fantastic reflection handling. This is different from most of the other QD-OLEDs released in 2024, which have glossy coatings. Now, we know that there's a whole debate of matte versus glossy, so we won't outright say one is better than the other, but this matte coating is useful if you want to use it in a well-lit room. It diffuses light a lot better than on glossy screens, so reflections aren't as distracting. One thing to know about QD-OLEDs is that in bright rooms, blacks look purple. This is pretty noticeable on other QD-OLEDs with glossy coatings. However, it isn't as distracting on this matte coating, but the purple tint is still there. It isn't completely gone on this monitor, it just isn't as bad as on glossy counterparts. So it's decent if you want to use it in a well-lit room, but the best way to use a QD-OLED like this one is in a dark room. How else would you enjoy those deep and inky blacks and the lack of blooming around bright objects? Its near infinite contrast is definitely fantastic for watching content in dark rooms, but you also need it to display bright and vivid colors for the best HDR experience. Luckily, that's the case with this monitor, as it makes colors look bright and vivid like any QD-OLED. Images look realistic for a great HDR experience. Even in SDR, it has accurate colors before calibration. Unlike many monitors, it doesn't have a real sRGB mode, but it has a setting that limits colors to the sRGB color space. This means they aren't oversaturated, but it still has some issues with gamma and the white balance, so you need to calibrate it for the best accuracy. Alright, before we move on to gaming, let's discuss a few more things regarding picture quality with a focus on productivity. First off, text looks very sharp thanks to its high resolution, but there's a catch. Because of its triangular RGB subpixel layout, there is some fringing around letters or even at the top and bottom edges of windows. However, it's hard to notice, and some people may not see it at all, so whether it bothers you or not changes from person to person. Another advantage of this monitor is that it has wide viewing angles, so the image looks the same no matter where you view it from. This is useful if you need to show your screen to someone next to you, whether you're watching videos or gaming. Alright, let's talk about the elephant in the room, burn-in. Like any OLED, it has the risk of burn-in with constant exposure to the same static elements over time. This is mainly a problem if you have the same static elements on the screen all the time, like desktop icons, the taskbar, or even in-game elements. But as long as you change things like gaming a little, watching some videos, and doing a bit of work, you won't have too many problems. Samsung also included a few settings to reduce the risk of burn-in. There's a pixel refresh setting that you can run to clean up the screen after using it for a while. It also has an adjust logo brightness setting that dims static logos or elements on the screen. Now, let's move on to the fun stuff and what you've all been waiting for, the gaming performance. As mentioned earlier, it has a 240Hz refresh rate that you can reach with both HDMI and DisplayPort connections, as long as your graphics card supports DSC, which most do. It also supports any type of VRR format to reduce screen tearing. Thanks to its OLED panel, it has a near instant response time at any refresh rate. This means that motion looks incredibly sharp, and the only blur you see is caused by persistence. Unfortunately though, it doesn't have a black frame insertion feature to reduce this persistence blur. It even has remarkable refresh rate compliance, meaning it can make full color transitions before the monitor draws the next frame. This is another factor that leads to very crisp motion. That said, one downside of OLEDs when it comes to gaming is that they have noticeable VRR flicker with changing frame rates, and this monitor is no exception. You can see this type of VRR flicker mostly in dark scenes, but this is only an issue if the frame rate changes a lot, and not so much if your PC can maintain consistent frame rates. However, it does have a VRR control setting to reduce this flicker, but you need to update the firmware to 10.03 or newer for it to work properly. This setting actually does reduce the VRR flicker, but there are some trade-offs to using it because it increases the input lag and also introduces stutter. So it's really a choice between deciding which con you don't mind gaming with. Speaking of input lag, this monitor feels very responsive at any refresh rate as long as you have the VRR control setting disabled. With it on, the input lag increases to nearly 25 milliseconds at its max refresh rate, so it's not low enough for playing games that need fast reactions. Lastly, while this monitor is fantastic for PC gaming, it's also an amazing choice for console gaming. It can take full advantage of both the PS5 and Xbox Series X or S, thanks to its HDMI 2.1 ports, so you can play 4K games up to 120Hz, and there aren't any issues. Alright, now that we know how it performs, this brings us to the main question. Should you buy it? There's no question that this is a fantastic monitor for both PC and console gaming, thanks to its fast response time, low input lag, and high refresh rate. It also delivers remarkable picture quality with its deep and inky blacks and vivid colors, so you're really getting the best of both worlds in terms of gaming and picture quality. When considering whether or not to buy this monitor, you have to think about how it competes against the competition. And well, there are quite a few other options with the same panel. That means these other displays pretty much perform the same, and choosing one over another really comes down to price and features. Even having the matte coating is something to think about because it's useful if you want to use it in a bright room. Honestly, it's a pretty good alternative if you aren't a fan of glossy displays. But if you are, the Dell AW3225QF is another great option with the same QD-OLED panel, so it also has a 4K resolution and 240Hz refresh rate. However, it has a curved screen, which may not be to everyone's liking. Another difference versus the Samsung monitor is the glossy screen coating, but it also has a few extra features like Dolby Vision, which is useful for watching content or for gaming with an Xbox. It tends to cost a bit less than the Samsung too, but if you find both of these monitors at the same price, you pretty much have to choose between a glossy or matte screen. On the other hand, if you want something with a higher refresh rate, or you don't need something with a 4K resolution, you can also look into the Samsung Odyssey OLED G8. It's a 27-inch QD-OLED with a 1440p resolution and 360Hz refresh rate, so it's the better choice if you care about playing games at higher refresh rates. It also has matte coating, but it lacks some features and has worse motion handling than the OLED G8 at 60Hz, so only consider it if you're going to take advantage of its max refresh rate. Otherwise, the OLED G8 is more versatile for both console and PC gaming. That's all for the Samsung Odyssey OLED G8. If you want more details on the monitor, check out our written review. The link is in the description below. And while you're there, don't forget to subscribe to this new channel. Until next time, I'm Nicholas from ratings.com, where we help you find the best products for your needs. Ciao. Meaning it can make full color. It has remarkable refresh rate compliance, meaning it can make full color transitions before the monitor draws the next frame. This is another factor that leads to very crisp motion handling.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Thanks for letting me know.
They have noticeable VRR. One noticeable downside when it comes to OLEDs is that they have noticeable VRR flicker with changing frame rates.